I'm Zinniop, and I invented the Worms tier list. Welcome back to the series that just won't die. I'm your host Zinniop, like I said in the cold open, so here's all the worms I've ranked so far. Sure are a lot of worms. If you want to pause and read all of them and why they ended up there, you can do that. Pause. Maybe that's supposed to be in brackets. Doesn't matter. Let's go ahead with an easy one, the Lugworm. Arenicola means the sand inhabitor, referencing how they live in the sand. Can only get more complicated from here. Lugworms are known for their U-shaped burrows formed by digging headfirst into the sand, crapping out a cap for the tunnel, and then slowly eating all the sand in front of them. They are tier 1 deposit feeders and can efficiently pick out only the nutrients of barren sand, which they go through 100 times their body weight of daily. They're considered ecosystem engineers, which is like the monument version of a keystone species for the burrows. They make nutrient cycling and aeration. They're also sometimes considered keystone species, but there's only so much you can do to make the intertidal mudflat hospitable. They're also very commonly used as bait for fishing, which I've already expressed how little I care about, but I still did my research. The main reason they're so prized is that they're similarly effective to live bait without all the many hassles of live bait. Since lugworms live in one place, underground, they have external gills and a ton of vascular tissue, which makes them really juicy when you use them as bait. Also, they're super common. So to me, the lugworm has a similar quality to the earthworm, where its commonness and simplicity, yet overwhelming success, makes them kind of an everyman, the fool, if you will. However, while the earthworm is the everyman gardener, the lugworm is the everyman fisher, so I'll have to let it slip down into B tier. So Goblet Worms add in, you guessed it, another new phylum, the Entoprocta or internal anuses. This is because their gut loops all the way around with the anus inside the ring of tentacles, as opposed to the bryozoans, whose gut only loops around partly and lets out below the lophophore. Goblet worms in general have to be contrasted with bryozoans. This already doesn't bode well. They're a sessile filter feeder, and they mostly live in the intertidal, sealing themselves shut during low tide to keep from drying out. So, barnacles. I just described barnacles. Actually, I just described pretty much every sessile intertidal organism: mussels, barnacles, bryozoans, tunicates. Now, I do like tunicates, but that's mainly because of salps, and I like mussels because of how they taste. I guess I don't hate them, but it just seems like it's the 5th runner-up of intertidal organisms I have to care about, but they don't really do anything special. And some of them, actually most of them, don't even live in the intertidal. I guess they're colonials. But they don't have separate zooid types, they're just some of the same guy in the same place. So D tier. The Tatzelwurm is apparently a continuation of the legacy of the Germanic worms, though it's really more of a cryptid, and you guys know how I feel about cryptids. Actually, you probably don't. I'm not even sure I have a really solid opinion. So I think cryptids are kind of a tired trope. Ever since the dragon video and the cryptids video, it just feels like every country is rehashing the same series of animal parts. Big cats are fine, I guess. Farm animals are alright. Big lizards are cool. 90% of all mythological creatures are some combination of that. They're just human but weird. And the Tatzelwurm is no exception. It's just a giant snake with a cat's head and arms. Very similar to the Evren from Turkic mythology, because there is nothing new under the sun. Just put it in F tier. Same logic as the Goblet Worm. It's too many things I'm expected to care about, and it's not even real. Ice worms belong to a genus called Mesenchytreus in the middle of the Earth. They're a poorly studied group of annelids found in North American glaciers, even as far south as California. Little is known about them because they die if the temperature goes above or below 0 degrees Celsius. It pretty much has to be exactly that. Give me a minute. They live 30 feet deep in glaciers and come out pretty rarely in the summer. We don't know what they eat, how they reproduce, or even how they burrow into the ice. We don't know how they get in the ice. I don't really know how I can be expected to rank something that we know so little about. But it's B tier because I'm kind of feeling it. Machaeridia, the little swords, are a group of worms that went extinct in the Carboniferous, so they missed their chance to show up in paleonomenclature. Found in central Russia, they were probably found in more places, but we don't do a lot of Paleozoic excavation except in exactly Yunnan in the Cambrian. Unlike many worms, they have armor, which I suppose is typical for the Ordovician period they arrived in, but not at all typical to annelids. Yes, there are 2 building worms with calcium and quartz plating, which is to say they cover themselves in sand and broken up shells, but they're all sessile. Machaerids could move, we think. Now, Machaerids is a bit too much trouble to say. They need a common name, so I guess they did make it into paleonomenclature. That being the case, the immediate idea is Saber worm, a direct translation of the Latin name. Now, normally I would say that living animals aren't usually named after the shape of their teeth and instead name them after a more obvious trait, but this isn't actually paleonomenclature, so they're just the saber worms immediately. I do like saber worms, actually, so I'll put them in A tier. Dr. Worm is a song by They Might Be Giants. I'm finding it harder and harder to get real entries and easier to get joke entries. From what I've heard, I didn't love it. The guy's voice was annoying, but it kind of grew on me. The instrumental, on the other hand, had gotten old by the end of the song. Also, he says, "I'm not a real doctor, but I am a real worm," and I don't think he actually is. He's a human. So regardless of his comments, I'd still rather listen to Kanye. and Dr. Worm goes down into D tier. This is turning into a real Debbie Downer of an episode. Let's do Sludge Worms next. Sludge Worms are actually pretty special to me because for a biology class I took last semester, I actually got to fish out a sludge worm from the pond and examine it under a microscope. It was really cool. Also, I happen to know the guy who wrote the current Wikipedia article on sludge worms, and yeah, he's a great guy. Actually, I shouldn't say I know him, but I took one class with him. I think they were him. So, there. Anyway, what are sludge worms? Well, they're a type of annelids, take a shot, found at the bottom of lakes, rivers, and some sewage canals. They are very small. Their surface area and oxygen intake has to be massive for bottom feeder typical levels of anoxia. Actually, for well beyond bottom feeder levels of anoxia, they have some kind of advanced hemoglobin that works really hard, and so they've really got a whole niche to themselves. They're deposit feeders like the lugworm and earthworm, so what are they, the everyman for lake fishers? I'll tell you what they are. They're the everyman for zoology college students, and that's me. Hachi mama, send them up to S tier. That's right, baby. Positivity is so back. The Innkeeper Worm. Yes, I know it looks like a penis. That's only why we call it the penis fish. And if you're like, wait, that doesn't look like a penis, it's uncircumcised. It's a delicacy in Korea and China, which is why eat a huge D is actually seen as a compliment over there. Actually, I don't think it's a delicacy per se, but it's eaten over there at least. Innkeeper worms make U-shaped burrows like a lugworm, but then they exude slime covering the walls of the burrow, pump water in and out of the burrow, and then slurp up all the mucus when it gets full enough. I don't know, man. It's called the penis fish. I guess it can have a C tier. Frostwyrms are a type of creature from World of Warcraft. I guess they might show up in other fantasies, but it's just frost plus worm. But I know them from Warcraft. Actually, I know them from Hearthstone, the Warcraft trading card game. In that game, there are a couple of Syndragoses, but mostly the Frostworm hype is concentrated in Frostworm's Fury. So let's talk about this card. I don't like it. Now, on some level, that's because I don't personally play it, so I always see it as an enemy. Even when I did play Death Knight, I was more of a BB single U, and I don't really like Frost Death Knight. To be fair, who the heck would like a burn deck? A deck whose entire purpose is killing you from hand. A deck style with zero counterplay besides healing or just killing them first. To be fair, in Standard they don't have enough burn to make up a whole deck, and in Wild, well, killing them first is very, very easy. But I still remember when Corpsicle was in Standard, and killing them first becomes a lot harder when they have a card that says freeze all enemy minions. Now, it is a triple rune card, so on some level it's meant to be a bit overpowered, but I just don't like how they've made a card so annoying in Standard and yet so useless in Wild. Cough, cough, Colossus! And so I'm just going to drop it off in D tier. It's time for Gastrotrichs, 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 or hairy stomachs. Gastrotrichs aren't technically worms, but they're long, thin, squishy, and have no face, so they are worms. Fun fact about Gastrotrichs, this ending tricho is from a stem thrich, but in ancient Greek, only one syllable can have aspirated plosives, so the nominative form has thrix, but oblique forms are mostly tricho. I hope you like that fact, because it is the most interesting thing about Gastrotrichs. They are a group of grazing meiofauna, which is to say they're big enough to be plankton, but they don't live in the water column, they live on the ground. They are distinguished because of their two-layered cuticle, and if that sounds familiar, that's because it's true of all ecdysozoa, so Gastrotrichs have a confusing phylogenetic placement, which is great, because penis worms and acorn worms didn't already tread that into the ground. That, and they have a duo-gland adhesive organ. One gland makes glue to stick them to a rock. The other gland makes glue solvent to unstick them. They have no vascular systems. They do, of course, have a bunch of cilia on the belly type area, which is to say the hairy stomachs that they're named after. I gotta be honest, I do not care about Gastrotrichs, but I am reminded of the arrow worms from last video, and, you know, it's good graces. And now we have too many D tiers, so C tier. Horseshoe worms are another phylum, the Phoronida, named after Phoronus, or Io, from Greek mythology, often conflated with Isis. For self-explanatory reasons, they're most closely related to brachiopods, which are like bivalves, but not. They are second most closely related to the Goblet Worms, which they are basically the same as. Oh, come on! Yes, they have a crown of tentacles, which kind of looks like two. Their gut loops around, and they cling on into the intertidal and close themselves up at low tide. For differences, their anus is outside the lophophore, their tentacles are hollow, and they are not colonial. Yeah. Woo! F tier! So space-time is modeled by Einstein's field equations, famously solved at least once by the Schwarzschild solution. Now, this specific solution comes with some interesting implications about what happens when you go past the event horizon of a black hole and towards the singularity where physics breaks down. Basically, space-time is symmetrical, and so in the negative quadrant, there must be white holes expelling matter and energy, and you can't enter past the event horizon. Those are connected to black holes via an Einstein-Rosen bridge, part of a group called Wormholes. Now, because we haven't seen any white holes, it's unlikely if any of these bridges let out into our universe, even if they exist. Though a white hole could just be a black hole traveling backwards in time, and some theories state wormholes could connect 2 points in space without ripping a hole in space-time. Now, even if they do exist, wormholes don't technically exist, at least not for a useful amount of time. They close faster than light, but we could potentially hold them open with exotic matter, which is kind of negative matter, but not the same as antimatter, because antimatter is basically the same but with a different charge, while exotic matter has negative mass and negative energy density, causes negative time distortion, or maybe it's tachyons and has imaginary mass, unlike antimatter, which does travel backwards in time but obeys the negative second law of thermodynamics, so for all extensive pertinence, it's just a math trick. Point being, wormholes are weird, but I think they serve as the best solution for faster than light space travel. They don't break relativity like actually faster than light travel does. They aren't as fast as light travel, like beaming people around, and they don't involve warping into an alternate dimension where space maps differently, so why not? Let's give them an S tier. Heartworms are a mosquito-borne parasite in up to a foot-long worm that lives inside the heart and blood vessels of dogs. I'm sure you guys know how much I like worms and how much I don't like dogs, but I'll endeavor to be fair. I also hate mosquitoes, and any disease they vector deserves a lower tier. They can live for up to 7 years, or 50 in dog years, and can start stacking every year until they fully obstruct the dog's circulatory system. They are carried from host to host almost exclusively by mosquitoes, which they also use as a host, having to move from the digestive tract into the salivary glands, which are technically still part of the digestive system. Look, I know you guys love your dogs or whatever, but heartworms are so cool. There's not a lot of parasites that live in systems besides the digestive system. They're gonochoric, even though they're endoparasites. They have symbiotic bacteria, and I like the name. So yeah, I'm putting them in A tier. And finally, Wurmple. I do like Wurmple, I suppose. Dustox is fine, but I really like Beautifly. It really could have used a Mega. It could have been the special version of Beedrill. I know that's not a good design philosophy. Two halves are meant to be separate, but still, make it Bug Fairy based on those Sphinx moths with the giant proboscis that co-evolve with the plant. Give it adaptability because of that. Come on! Generation 10 is based off Indian Ocean Islands. Actually, they might just use that idea for an entirely separate regional bug, but it better have adaptability. We need more viable bug types. And yeah, sans the imaginary Mega, Dustox and Beautifly kinda suck. And as someone who only plays competitive Pokemon, which is to say I don't actually play Pokemon, I just play Pokemon Showdown in the browser, I'm not touching the Wurmpolutions. I actually really like that Sphinx Moth idea, so I'm gonna go B tier. Okay, now I'll play you out. A rush, a rattling rash, rash on the mite, and the mite on the tick, and the tick on the louse, and the louse on the worm, and the worm on the feather on the bird, and the bird on the egg, and the egg on the bird, and the bird on the nest, and the nest on the leaf, and the leaf on the twig, and the twig on the branch, and the branch on the limb, and the limb on the bough, and the bough on the tree, and the tree in the hole, and the hole in the bog down in the valley, yo.